ever feel like you're trying to, I don't know, decode something when people start talking about research findings or
Oh,
studies?
absolutely. It comes up everywhere, doesn't it?
It does, whether it's for work stuff, maybe a presentation, or you're trying to get your head around something new in your field, or even just, plain curiosity.
Hmm.
Being able to quickly grasp what research is about is, well, it feels like a superpower
It
sometimes.
really is. And today we're sort of handing you the decoder ring for that.
Exactly, because understanding this language, the language of research, it isn't just for academics stuck in labs, right?
Not at all. It's a really fundamental tool for navigating, well, just the sheer amount of information out there today.
Yeah, and for engaging confidently with new ideas, new developments.
Precisely.
So think of this deep dive as your, let's say, your shortcut, getting the essential insights without, wading through pages and pages of dense
Yeah,
text.
getting straight to the useful bits.
Our mission today is pretty clear. Equip you with the practical language, the phrases, and a better grasp of the key concepts, the building blocks you need for research discussions.
And we're drawing this from a really helpful lesson, focusing specifically on English vocabulary and phrases for this.
Okay, let's jump in. Where do we start?
Well, at the heart of any research, you've got some core concepts. Let's start with the hypothesis. What exactly is that?
Okay, yeah, hypothesis. Good starting point. It's essentially a proposed explanation, like an educated guess, maybe.
Mm-hmm. An idea you want to test.
Right, an idea or starting point that researchers set out to investigate through, proper study and
Oh,
experiment.
an example might be.
Like someone might say, our hypothesis was that exercise improves memory. Is that initial hunch or idea they're putting to the test?
Got it. The way they actually go about testing that idea, that's their methodology, right?
Exactly. Methodology. So what does that really mean?
Well, it's the systematic plan, isn't it? The specific methods, the procedures, the how-to that researchers use for their particular study.
Okay, so if we hear something like their methodology involved interviews and surveys,
Uh-huh.
that tells us how they gathered their information. They chose those specific techniques, talking to people, asking questions via surveys. It's all about how they tried to answer their research question.
Right. It's the recipe they followed.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And once they've applied that methodology, they start gathering data. What's data?
Ah, data. That's the raw stuff, isn't it? The facts, the figures, maybe observations, survey answers, all the bits and pieces of information collected during the research.
So when someone says, we analyzed the data to find patterns.
That data could be anything, really. Survey responses, measurements from an experiment, interview transcripts.
Okay.
The key thing is, it's the evidence they're actually working with before they decide what it all means.
Makes sense. And after all that collecting and analyzing, they arrive at a conclusion. What's
Yeah.
that represent?
The conclusion is, well, the end point, sort of. It's the final judgment or the decision they reach after looking at and interpreting all that data they gathered.
It's what they figured out based on the evidence.
Exactly. So that example, the conclusion showed that our hypothesis was correct, tells us the outcome. Their investigation supported their initial idea.
So those four terms, hypothesis, methodology, data, and conclusion, they really are the foundation, aren't they?
Absolutely. Understanding those gives you a solid base for getting into research talk.
Definitely. And, to see how these things actually pop up in a normal chat, let's imagine, say, two university students talking about their research project.
Okay.
So one asks, hey, how's your research project coming along?
And the other might say,
Oh, it's going okay. Actually, I just finished collecting all my data.
yeah.
Phew. Now the real work starts, analyzing it all.
Okay, so straight away, collecting data. We know they've finished that big phase and they're moving on to the next step analysis.
Right. So what's a natural follow-up question there?
Maybe something like, oh, great. Remind me, what was the main question you were looking into again?
Good one. And the second student explains, I'm investigating how the amount of time teenagers spend on social media relates to their sleep habits.
Ah, okay. Very relevant topic.
Mm.
So if you're the first student and you're curious about how they did it, what would you ask?
You might ask, and what kind of approach did you take to gather that information?
Ah, see, they didn't just say methodology, they used approach. That's interesting. Shows there are different ways to ask about the how.
Exactly. And the second student could reply, well, I primarily used online surveys, and then I conducted a few follow-up interviews with students aged 14 to 17. The initial results look quite intriguing.
Okay, so that gives us the specific methods, surveys, interviews, and who they studied. Target group?
Yeah. And then how would the first student show they're interested in the findings?
They might say something like, wow, that sounds fascinating. I'd be really interested to hear what you conclude eventually.
Nice. And then maybe offer some help.
Oh, yeah, like, hey, if you want another pair of eyes to look over your report before you submit it, just let me know. That's a common thing in uni.
It is very supportive. And the other student would likely say, oh, thanks so much. I really appreciate that.
So yeah, in that quick chat, we heard collecting data, asking about the approach or methodology, interest in the conclusion, plus that helpful offer about the report. It flows quite naturally.
It really does. And we can pull out some really useful phrases from that exchange. Like the first one, I just finished collecting my data.
That's super clear, isn't it? Tells people exactly where you are in the process. Done with gathering, moving to analysis.
Right. Then there's the question, what kind of methodology did you use? Or like we heard, what kind of approach did you take?
Yeah, that's a fundamental question, really. Gets right to how the results were actually obtained. You need to know that.
Knowing the methods helps you judge the findings, understand the strengths, maybe the limitations too.
True. And that offer, let me know if you need help reviewing your report. That's such a good phrase for academic or even professional settings. Shows you're collaborative, supportive.
Yeah, these aren't just for that specific student scenario. You can definitely adapt these phrases for lots of different conversations about research.
Whether it's your own work or you're just trying to understand what someone else did.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got a feel for the keywords and seen them in action. Now let's maybe build confidence a bit more. Give people some ready-to-use phrases for talking about research themselves.
Good idea. A great way to start explaining the point of a study is, the purpose of this study is to.
Okay, like.
For example, the purpose of this study is to investigate the relationship between sleep duration and academic performance in college students. Nice and clear goal.
Yeah, very direct. States the aim right up front. Here's another one, maybe for describing how you did the work. We conducted an experiment to test our hypothesis.
Ah, okay. So that tells your audience straight away it was experimental, designed to check a specific idea, that hypothesis we talked about.
Exactly. And then when you want to share what you actually found.
You can say something like, the data indicates that a majority of participants preferred the new interface.
Right. Emphasizing it comes directly from the information, the data you gathered, not just your opinion.
Precisely. Or another way to present findings, especially when you're seeing connections. The results suggest a strong correlation between early childhood education and later academic success.
Suggest is a good word there. Often research points towards things rather than proving them absolutely, right?
That's a key point, yeah. It highlights a potential link found in the research. And finally, a really common and frankly important phrase in research. Further investigation is needed to fully understand this phenomenon.
Or further research is needed. Something like that.
Exactly. It acknowledges that one study is rarely the complete picture. It signals, the ongoing nature of research, where things might go next.
These phrases seem really versatile.
They are. You can weave them into presentations, discussions, even written summaries. They give you a kind of structure.
Yeah, a framework for clearly talking about different parts of the research process, the aim, the method, the results, what's next.
Exactly. It helps you move beyond just stating facts to explaining the why and how in a clear and professional way.
Okay, this is really practical stuff. So maybe to help lock all this in the vocabulary, these phrases, it might be useful to quickly think back to that student conversation we sketched out.
Yeah, good idea. Just replaying it in your mind, listening for how those terms and concepts we discussed were used naturally in the flow of the conversation.
Paying attention to the context really helps things stick, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Makes it less abstract.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. We've taken a good look at some essential vocabulary for talking about research hypothesis, methodology, data, conclusion.
We broke down a natural-sounding dialogue to see those terms actually being used.
And we've armed you with a set of practical, useful phrases you can hopefully use in your own conversations about research, starting, well, right away.
And being able to articulate this stuff clearly, whether you're explaining a study you just read about or talking about your own research ideas or projects, is just such a valuable skill.
It really is. It empowers you, doesn't it? Lets you engage more critically with all the information flying around.
And participate more confidently in those important academic and professional discussions.
Absolutely. So here's something to maybe think about as you go about your week. The next time you encounter some research, maybe in a news report, maybe something colleagues are discussing, just pause for a second and consider the terms and phrases we talked about today. How does knowing them change how you understand it? or how you might discuss it.
That's a great point. And maybe if you're involved in any kind of learning or investigation yourself, think about how being able to clearly state your own research questions, your methodologies, how that could sharpen your own thinking and improve how you communicate your work.
Yeah, it really boils down to having the right language, doesn't it? The language to effectively navigate, understand, and share knowledge.